Hello, my friend. What if the answer to sustainable, ethical, and local protein has been living in your backyard all along? Raccoon meat, once a survival staple, now fetching up to $20 a pound in specialty markets, is quietly sparking a wild food revival. But what's really behind this wild-caught protein? And could eating raccoon actually help the land, your health, and your wallet? From frontier survival to forgotten food. Let's go back to the beginning. For centuries, Native American tribes hunted raccoons, Procyon loader, for their nutritious meat and versatile pelts. Early American settlers relied on raccoon during lean winters, and raccoon stews were standard fare in rural communities from the Carolinas to the Ozarks. By the 1930s, with the Great Depression gripping the nation, raccoon became vital protein for millions. Cookbooks from the era list coon and sweet potato stew alongside rabbit and squirrel. But as chicken and pork became cheap and abundant, raccoon faded from most tables, surviving mainly in southern, Midwestern, and indigenous foodways. Now, thanks to chefs, foodies, and sustainable eating advocates, raccoon meat is making an unexpected comeback. Ecology, the urban survivor and ecosystem balancer raccoons are North America's most adaptable wild omnivore. They thrive from wild wetlands to city parks, with U.S. populations estimated at 15 to 20 million. Some suburban counties report densities of 400 to 500 raccoons per square mile, far beyond natural levels due to abundant food waste and lack of predators. Ecological roles. Raccoons control insect and rodent populations, disperse seeds, and act as scavengers. However, overpopulation leads to crop losses, predation on bird eggs and turtle nests, property damage, and disease risk. Wildlife managers and urban planners increasingly see responsible raccoon harvest as a win-win for both ecology and community. Harvesting, regulations, and modern supply chain. How is raccoon meat harvested? Regulated trapping and hunting, typically in the fall and winter, are legal in most U.S. states and parts of Canada. Trappers use humane live cage traps and follow state-set seasons and bag limits to prevent overharvest. Meat must be field-dressed quickly, thoroughly washed, skinned, and chilled, ensuring food safety. Market supply. Most raccoon meat is consumed by the hunter's family or shared within local communities. In states where sale is allowed, specialty butchers and wild game processors purchase cleaned raccoon for $7 to $10 and retail it at $15 to $20, similar to wild venison, boar, or rabbit. Online wild game clubs now offer raccoon meat subscription boxes, complete with recipes and safety guides. Nutritional value. Wild protein for modern diets. What's inside a serving of raccoon? Protein, 21-23 Gs per 100 Gs, on par with chicken, turkey, or rabbit. Fat, 2 to 4 G per 100 Gs, mostly unsaturated. Raccoon meat is leaner than pork or beef. Micronutrients, high in iron, B12, zinc, selenium, and omega-3s, especially if the animal foraged near water. No antibiotics, hormones, or feed additives. Health bonus. Wild-caught proteins may be less inflammatory and richer in micronutrient diversity due to natural diets. Like all wild game, raccoon is best for those seeking low-fat, high-protein, and ancestral diets. Food safety, risks and recommendations. Handling wild meat requires care. Raccoons can carry parasites such as Trichinella and Baylesia scaris, roundworm, and diseases like rabies, though rabies is not a foodborne risk if cooked thoroughly. Always wear gloves when field dressing, avoid cross-contamination, and cook meat to an internal temperature of at least 165 degrees 74 degrees. Most risk is eliminated by proper cooking and handling. State and USDA guidelines cover best practices for wild game. Professional processors. Many wild game butchers use vacuum sealing and flash freezing for extra food safety. QR code traceability and batch records are increasingly used for consumer confidence. Culinary tradition, from stews to fine dining. Flavor profile. Raccoon is dark, mild, and slightly sweet, with a touch of wild earthiness, less gamey than venison, often compared to a cross between turkey thigh and pork shoulder. The meat is firm and moist when slow cooked. Fat is concentrated around the body cavity, not marbled through the muscle. Classic dishes. Brunswick stew, a southern staple, traditionally made with raccoon, squirrel, or rabbit, tomatoes, corn, and beans. Raccoon chili, slow simmered with beans, peppers, and smoky spices. Raccoon barbecue, marinated, slow roasted, and served pulled on sandwiches. Modern innovation. Chefs are experimenting with raccoon confit, terrines, smoked raccoon pastrami, and tacos. Foragers and home cooks share recipes online from raccoon bolognese to wild game pot pie. Economics. From niche to market opportunity, wild game is a growing industry. U.S. wild game market is valued at over $300 million, while the global market, including venison, boar, rabbit, and niche meats like raccoon, is projected to exceed $3.5 billion by 2028. Specialty butchers, online retailers, and farm-to-table restaurants are expanding access to wild meats. Value chain. Raccoon is a low-input, high-margin product. No feed, no antibiotics, no land or water costs. Trappers, hunters, and small-scale processors capture most of the profit, keeping dollars local. Community and conservation. Raccoon harvest creates jobs in rural areas, funds conservation through license fees, and supports knowledge sharing in wild food circles. Sustainability and ecosystem impact. Why raccoon meat might be the future of sustainable eating. Wild harvest has minimal carbon footprint, no feed crops, fertilizers, or deforestation. Responsible harvest keeps populations in check, reducing damage to crops, bird nests, and wetland diversity. Consuming local abundant wild species can take pressure off industrial meat and promote ecosystem balance. Waste reduction. Raccoon pelts are still used in traditional crafts, clothing, and for educational purposes. Bones and offal are composted, used as pet treats, or returned to the land. Culture, community, and the raccoon renaissance. From stigma to story. Raccoon was once seen as poverty food, but now carries an adventurous, authentic, and even eco-friendly image. Chefs, foragers, and influencers use raccoon to teach about food history, sustainable eating, and the power of wild food. Cultural revival. Wild game festivals, raccoon cook-offs, and community hunts fundraise for conservation and celebrate culinary heritage. Social media is full of #wild food stories, recipe exchanges, and educational content on safe and ethical wild meat consumption. Controversy, safety, and public perception barriers to acceptance. The trash panda image. Urban raccoons rummage through garbage, creating hygiene concerns, which are eliminated through safe harvesting and cooking. Some animal welfare advocates question the ethics of hunting, while ecologists argue for sustainable population management. Commercial sale of wild harvested raccoon is banned in some states due to outdated regulations. Food safety protocols and transparency are key to wider adoption. Changing minds. Taste test events and chef-led pop-ups help overcome prejudice. Science-based education, food safety, ecological value, is helping to normalize wild protein in urban and suburban markets. The future. Innovation and potential. What's next for raccoon meat? Product development. Smoked raccoon sausage, raccoon jerky, ready-to-eat wild protein bars. Transparency. QR codes for source traceability. Forest-to-fork tours. And DNA testing for species authentication. Eco-labels. Wild harvest certification could boost consumer trust, similar to certified organic or certified humane programs. Policy trends. Some states are modernizing laws to allow the commercial sale of wild game with safety standards. Partnerships between wildlife agencies, chefs, and conservation groups are shaping a more resilient wild game sector. Food security. In times of supply chain disruption, wild food, like raccoon, provides local, independent protein. Final reflection. Raccoon meat isn't just a curiosity or survival food. It's a powerful story of ecological balance, community resilience, culinary adventure, and a reimagined food system. By embracing sustainable wild proteins, we can reduce environmental impact, celebrate forgotten traditions, and savor new flavors. The next time you think about what's for dinner, consider looking a little closer to home and a little further into the wild. Would you try raccoon meat for the flavor, sustainability, or the experience? Should wild protein play a bigger role in the future of food? Share your thoughts, questions, or wild game recipes below. Subscribe to AGRI 360X for more stories from the wild, the field, and the future, every day at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.